Hi viewers, welcome to Deep Dive America. Today we're discussing a critical question. Will Trump's 2025 China tariffs trigger a global recession? Let's dive in. Trump is back, and so are the tariffs. Just days after announcing his 2025 trade policy, global markets are already reacting. China is retaliating, and economists are sounding the alarm. But what exactly do these new tariffs include? And could they really push the world into another recession? Today, we take a deep dive into the truth behind Trump's 2025 China tariffs and what they could mean for the global economy. This isn't Trump's first time using tariffs as a political weapon. Back in 2018, his administration imposed billions of dollars in tariffs on Chinese imports, igniting what quickly became a full-blown trade war. In response, China hit back with tariffs of their own, and the economic ripple effects were felt far and wide. American farmers lost billions in exports, consumers saw higher prices on everyday goods, and the stock market became increasingly volatile. Critics warned that the strategy hurt more Americans than it helped, but Trump's supporters defended the move, insisting it was long overdue, that for decades China had taken advantage of the U.S. through unfair trade practices. They believed strong action was necessary to level the playing field. Now, in 2025, Trump is doubling down. He's rolling out a fresh wave of tariffs even harsher than before, and once again aiming squarely at China. The question is, will it work this time, or are we heading down a familiar and dangerous path? So, what exactly is in Trump's new round of tariffs for 2025? At the heart of the plan is a sweeping 125% tariff on all Chinese electronics, steel, and electric vehicles entering the United States. That's not a typo. 125%. According to Trump and his trade advisors, the goal is to shield American manufacturing from what they call unfair competition and to push back against the growing dominance of Chinese technology in global markets. By making these imports drastically more expensive, the administration hopes U.S. companies will have a better shot at staying competitive, and that consumers and industries will turn to domestic alternatives instead of relying on China. But as expected, China didn't sit back quietly. Within days, Beijing announced its own countermeasures, slapping steep tariffs, 84% to be exact, on critical American exports including soybeans, oil, and semiconductors. These are some of the very industries that Trump's base depends on. Farmers, energy producers, and tech manufacturers could be the first to feel the squeeze. And just like that, the trade chessboard is back in motion. Moves and countermoves are already unfolding, and global markets are watching nervously. It's a high-stakes game with huge economic consequences, not just for the US and China, but for the entire global supply chain that connects them. The world has seen this playbook before, but this time, the tariffs are bigger, the stakes are higher, and the fallout could be far more unpredictable. So what does all of this really mean for the average American? In short, get ready to pay more. With massive new tariffs in place, prices on a wide range of goods are expected to climb. Everyday electronics like smartphones and laptops, imported cars, especially electric vehicles, and even essential construction materials such as steel and aluminum could all see sharp price increases. That means whether you're building a home, upgrading your phone, or buying a new car, it's going to cost more. And it's not just consumers who are feeling the squeeze. Thousands of US businesses that rely on Chinese-made parts and materials are already under pressure. From small manufacturers to big tech companies, many are scrambling to find alternative suppliers, often at a higher cost. This disruption to supply chains can lead to production delays, layoffs, and increased prices for finished products. Now, while some American factories may benefit from the reduced competition and increased demand for domestic goods, many economists warn that the broader economic impact could be far more damaging. They argue that interrupting global supply chains can hurt productivity, stunt innovation, and ultimately weigh down economic growth, not just in the US, but worldwide. Still, supporters of the policy say this isn't about short-term gains. It's about the long game. They argue that decades of offshoring have hollowed out American industry and left the country dangerously dependent on China for critical technologies and materials. For them, the pain is worth the promise of long-term economic independence, more domestic jobs, and a stronger industrial base. Whether that vision becomes reality or whether these tariffs backfire remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, the decisions being made now will shape America's economic future for years to come. But this isn't just a showdown between America and China. It's a global issue with global consequences. In today's interconnected world, the economies of nations are tightly woven together through trade, investment, and supply chains. So, when the two largest economies on Earth start locking horns in a serious trade war, it sends shockwaves across the entire planet. The impact is already being felt. Since the announcement of Trump's new tariffs, stock markets across Asia and Europe have dropped sharply, with investors fearing a prolonged period of economic uncertainty. Companies that operate internationally are nervous, and supply chains already stretched thin in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic are bracing for even more disruption. Manufacturers across multiple continents depend on parts and raw materials that move seamlessly across borders. Tariffs throw a wrench into that system, slowing things down, raising costs, and creating bottlenecks. And the consequences don't stop there. Emerging markets, many of which rely on exporting goods or receiving investments from larger economies, are especially vulnerable. When global trade slows down, these countries often feel the pain first and the hardest. Currency instability, job losses, and slower growth can follow quickly. Economic experts and international financial institutions are warning that if this trade war escalates too far, it could tip an already fragile global economy over the edge. A global recession, once a distant concern, now feels like a very real possibility. The actions of just two countries have the power to shake the financial stability of many, and this new chapter in U.S.-China tensions could be the spark that sets off something much bigger than either side anticipated. Here's what top economists are saying about the potential fallout. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, has issued a stark warning, projecting that Trump's 2025 tariffs could shave off as much as 0.5% from global GDP growth by the end of the year. That may not sound like a lot at first glance, but in the context of the global economy, it represents hundreds of billions of dollars in lost output and growth. It's the kind of slowdown that can ripple across continents, affecting everything from job creation to government budgets. Meanwhile, analysts on Wall Street are sounding a different kind of alarm. They say we're entering a period of what they call artificial inflation, where the prices of goods aren't rising because more people want them, but simply because trade policies are making them more expensive to import. That kind of inflation hits consumers hard, especially those already stretched thin by the rising cost of living. And it creates a tricky environment for businesses trying to plan for the future. Despite these concerns, some voices in the economic world argue that this kind of short-term pain could be worth it, if and only if it helps rebalance global trade over the long run. They believe the world has grown too dependent on cheap Chinese manufacturing, and that a reset could open the door for more diversified, resilient supply chains. But even those who support the tariffs admit, this is a high-stakes gamble with no guaranteed payoff. It's a debate filled with tough trade-offs, deep uncertainty, and no easy answers. What's clear is that these decisions will have lasting impacts on economies, industries, and everyday lives all around the world. Trump's 2025 tariffs are bold, controversial, and already making waves across the global economy. They've reignited debates about protectionism, globalization, and America's role in international trade. Supporters see them as a powerful move to revive American industry and reduce dependence on China, while critics warn they could trigger inflation, disrupt supply chains, and tip the world toward a new recession. The truth is, no one knows exactly how this will play out. What we do know is that the stakes are incredibly high. These aren't just policy shifts, they're decisions that could shape the economic landscape for years to come. And one thing is absolutely certain. The next few months will be crucial. Markets, governments, and everyday people around the globe will be watching closely, waiting to see whether this gamble pays off or backfires in ways no one saw coming. So what do you think? Are Trump's tariffs a necessary step to protect American jobs and industries? Or are they a risky gamble that could destabilize an already fragile global economy? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and join the conversation. And if you found this deep dive helpful, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more content just like this, and check out our next video on how World War II transformed the United States into a global superpower. It's linked right here on the screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.